Every troop down in Troop-ville liked Christmas a lot, but the sergeant major ensconced in his office did not. The sergeant major hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Some thought TBI or his unfaithful wife was the reason. It could be his safety brief wouldn't download quite right. It could be, perhaps, his glow belt was too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his manhood was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his junk or marital woes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Joes. Staring down at leave requests, ensuring each was denied, nothing pleased him as much as making a soldier cry. For he knew everyone in the barracks beneath was busy now packing for Christmas leave. And they'll wear civilians' clothes, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled, his heart as hard as a rock. I must find a way to prevent the Christmas leave block. For tomorrow, he knew, all the Janes and the Joes would wake up bright and early. They expected to go home. And then, oh, the joy! Oh, the joy, 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 joy. That's one thing he hated, the joy, 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 joy. Then the troops, young and old, would sit down and drink. And they'd drink, and they'd drink, and they'd drink, 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 drink. They would consume beer, and with booze they would toast, which was something the sergeant major dreaded the most. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every soldier in his unit, the tall and the small, would do whatever they liked on Christmas without a fresh shave at all. They would do no PME, there would be no PT, and the more the sergeant major thought of this whole Christmas fling, the more he thought, I must stop the whole thing. Why, for my whole career I've put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming, but how? Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The sergeant major got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, he laughed through his teeth, as he quickly denied every last request for leave. And he chuckled and he clucked, this has always been my dream. I'll charge the entire unit under Article 15. All I need are the charge sheets. The sergeant major looked around, but since the S1 was closed, there was none to be found. He roared obscenely at his leave block perversion. I'll get you communists for this Christmas desertion. Then he got loaded on some old hooch from his locker, exempt from the alcohol policy as he had so many rockers. Then the sergeant major rose and toward the base chapel he swaggered, the source of the season that kept him most angered. All the windows were dark, quiet, snowfall serene, as he rearranged the animals from the nativity scene into poses grotesque and some downright obscene. This was stop number 1, the grouchy sergeant major hissed, and he stormed off toward the barracks, clenching his fists. He slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant throughout the whole barracks, and he took every present. Tobacco, care packages, all the grog and the rum, video games, iPhones, and all things considered fun. The one speck of goodness left behind that louse was a pinch of dip that was even too small for a mouse. It was 1/4 dawn, all the troops still a snooze, when he packed up his trunk and took one last pull on his booze. He drove off with their presents, the tobacco, the wrappings, the alcohol, the tinsel, the video games, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Moto, he drove to the tip-top to give it a heave-ho. I screwed them, but good, the sergeant major was humming. By now they're finding out no Christmas is coming. They're just climbing out of the rack. I know just what they'll do. All the Joes in the barracks will cry boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the sergeant major, that I simply must hear. So he paused. The sergeant major put a hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sounded motivated. It sounded so merry, the sergeant major grew constipated. He stared down at the barracks, and through his bloodshot eyes, he saw a joyful scene that made his blood pressure rise. Every troop down in Troop-ville, the tall and the small, were falling into formation for a liberty call. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming, it came. The CG granted them 96 hours of liberty just the same. Then Sergeant Major, feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? Then his cell phone rang. What in tarnation? It was the CO. Sergeant Major, why are you late for Libo formation?